What about escape sign illuminance? Well, the illuminance of any area of the green safety colour of the sign should be at least 2 CD per metre squared in all relevant viewing directions. And you've also got a ratio to satisfy. The ratio of the illuminance, which is the L white to the L colour, on the sign the L white to the L colour should not be less than 5:1 ratio, and it should not be greater than 15:1. So the L white to the L colour should be between 5 to 15:1. What about spacing of luminaires and escape routes? How far should you space them between each one? Well, as long as you're maintaining the required 1 lux level on the centre line or the 0.5 lux in the open areas, in other words, you space them to meet the standard. Now, there's spacing tables that the designers will use that make sure they are spaced correctly. So what you do is you use the spacing tables, and that'll tell you to meet that 1 lux, you will have to have them so far apart. There are spacing tables that rather than go in there and fail or pass, use the spacing tables, and that will tell you how far they have to be spaced to make sure you get the required luminance levels. What about an inner room condition? Do you need emergency lighting in an inner room condition? Well, this is an inner room is a room within a room. As you can see here, a room within a room. And the interpretation would be, therefore, that the access room is the escape route from the inner room. And because you've got to illuminate escape routes, you could argue that the access room needs illuminating because it's the escape route from the inner room. And therefore, it's interpreted that it should have emergency lighting. Now, an exception might be if the access room was very small and the wall and or the door to the escape corridor outside had sufficient clear or translucent panels to allow borrowed light. In other words, if you've got borrowed lighting and it's not going to be in there, you'd have to go over the top. You can get away with it. Now, this will be subject to a risk assessment. In other words, if, for example, the notices were adhered to the clear panels obscuring the light, then you can argue it's got no lighting. You could argue putting a light in there, but not always. Base it on the risk assessment. Base it on the risk assessment.